We share brilliant values and honor the world's most cherished legacies to pass our heritage on to future generations. Busan invites you. The 48th session of UNESCO World Heritage Committee, July 2026, Busan, Korea.
In our headlines on this Friday, February 27th, here in South Korea, President Lee Jae-myung embarks on a diplomatic tour this coming weekend to meet separately with his counterparts in Singapore and in the Philippines, respectively, next week. And the Lee Jae-myung administration and Hyundai Motor Group ink an MOU on an investment pledge of 9 trillion Korean won by the car maker in the Saemangeum area of Jeollabuk-do province. Meanwhile, the current blockbuster at local theatres, The King's Warden, is encouraging its fans to flock to its filming location for a first-hand experience of the teenage king Tanjong's final days in exile. We start with details of the president's diplomatic agenda at the start of March amid his planned summits in Singapore and in the Philippines, respectively. Our correspondent Yoon Jung-min reports.
The South Korean president will embark on a state visit to Singapore from March 1st to March 3rd. President Lee Jae-myung will meet Singaporean Prime Minister Lawrence Wong for a summit and lunch, as well as President Tharman Shanmugaratnam for a state dinner on Monday. An AI dialogue with industry leaders is also scheduled. In a written briefing on Friday, Blue House spokesperson Kang Yoo-jung said Korea looks forward to working closely with Singapore, seen as a logistics and financial hub, for cooperation on trade, investment, and infrastructure, as well as AI and nuclear energy. Lee and Wong met last November on the margins of the APEC leaders meeting in Korea and forged a strategic partnership.
앞으로 양국은 전략적 동반자 관계에 기초하여 변화하는 경제와 안보 환경에 대처하는 한편 전략 첨단 기술 협력을 더욱 강화하고 인적 교류도 확대하기로 뜻을 모았습니다.
On March 3rd, President Lee flies to Manila for a 2-day state visit. He will meet Philippine President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. for talks, a state dinner, and a business forum. The leaders will explore ways to deepen cooperation on the defense industry, infrastructure, and trade, as well as build partnerships in nuclear energy, shipbuilding, critical minerals, and AI. The Blue House spokesperson noted that the summit takes place on Tuesday as the two countries celebrate the 77th anniversary of the establishment of their diplomatic relations. The Philippines is the first country in Southeast Asia to build diplomatic ties with Korea and has been a friendly country for decades dating back to the Korean War. The Philippines and Singapore are set to host ASEAN-related summits this year and next year, respectively. During the Korean ASEAN summit in Malaysia last October, Lee unveiled his ASEAN policy called the CSP Vision, or Contributor, Springboard, and Partner Vision, that puts cooperation on the economy and security front and center. Yoon Jung-min, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, earlier on this Friday, the president traveled to Jeollabuk-do province to make official a major investment pledge by Hyundai Motor Group. Our top office correspondent Song Yu-jin has details.
President Lee Jae-myung on Friday thanked Hyundai Motor Group for what he described as a bold and difficult decision.
정부를 믿고 또 이렇게 기업 차원에 어쩌면 상당히 리스크가 있을 수도 있는 이런 대결단을 해준 우리 현대차 그룹의 우리 국민을 대신해서 다시 한번 진심으로 감사드립니다.
President Lee was referring to the group's massive investment pledge of 9 trillion Korean won, roughly $6.2 billion in the Saemangeum area of Jeollabuk-do province. Hyundai Motor Group and the government signed a memorandum of understanding outlining the investment pledge on the same day. With this multi-billion-dollar investment, the government aims to transform the area into a center for robotics, hydrogen, and artificial intelligence.
광활한 부지와 풍부한 일조량을 자랑하며 물류와 교통 인프라 또한 탄탄하게 갖춰 나가고 있습니다. 현대자동차 그룹의 혁신 역량 그리고 풍부한 자원이 합쳐진다면 새만금은 최적의 시너지를 발휘하는 기회의 땅이 될 수 있을 것으로 믿습니다.
Under the plan, Hyundai will invest 5.8 trillion won to build an AI data center, 400 billion for a robotics manufacturing plant, and 2.3 trillion won for a 200 megawatt water electrolysis hydrogen facility and gigawatt-scale solar power generation. An additional 400 billion won will go toward developing what it calls an AI hydrogen city that will utilize autonomous vehicles, hydrogen mobility, and tram systems.
We estimate the project will generate some 16 trillion won in economic impact and create up to 71,000 jobs, contributing to the revitalization of the regional economy and balanced national growth.
Friday's MOU is seen as a cornerstone of the Lee administration's push to narrow regional disparities by attracting major corporations beyond the capital region. Speaking later at a town hall with residents of Jeollabuk-do province, President Lee reiterated that balanced regional development is not only a policy priority, but a survival strategy for the Korean economy. 송유진, Arirang News.
In other news, North Korea's Kim Jong-un was at the Kumsusan Palace of the Sun on Thursday. Now, this is according to the regime state-run media on this Friday. Kim was at the family mausoleum with new key members of the ruling Workers' Party. There, they reportedly reaffirmed their resolve to promote their party's program. Kim also took photos with participants of the 9th Congress against the backdrop of the April 25th House of Culture, where the event was held. The White House says U.S. President Donald Trump is open to dialogue with North Korea's Kim Jong-un. The statement followed a request for comment from the South Korean media in response to Kim's recent remarks regarding possible talks with Washington. Our Kim Do-yeon has more.
The White House confirmed Thursday that U.S. President Donald Trump remains open to dialogue with North Korea without any preconditions, signaling a potential opening for renewed diplomacy. This follows North Korean leader Kim Jong-un's address at the 9th Workers' Party Congress, where he said that Pyongyang has no reason not to get along with the United States if Washington withdraws its hostile policy and respects North Korea's current status as a nuclear power. He emphasized that the prospect of bilateral ties depends entirely on the attitude of the United States, although he noted Pyongyang will maintain a hardline stance as its baseline policy. A White House official responded by confirming that U.S. policy on North Korea remains unchanged. The official highlighted the stabilization of the Korean Peninsula achieved during President Trump's first term, referencing their 3 summits in Singapore in June 2018, Hanoi in February 2019, and Panmunjom in June 2019. Meanwhile, South Korea's chief nuclear envoy Chung Hyun-do confirmed in Washington on Thursday local time that while the U.S. maintains an open stance, including the no preconditions aspect, there is currently no active working level contact between Washington and Pyongyang. Chung added that Seoul will continue its role as a facilitator to support a resumption of bilateral talks. While Kim left the door open for Washington, he strongly rejected any engagement with Seoul. He labeled South Korea as the most hostile entity and stated he will permanently exclude the South from the category of compatriots. Also addressing Pyongyang's Party Congress on Thursday, the Chinese Foreign Ministry reiterated a call for cooperation. Spokesperson Mao Ning stated that China, as a close neighbor, is closely monitoring developments on the peninsula. She urged all parties to work together to safeguard peace, stability, and the political resolution process. These shifting dynamics arrive amid growing speculation that President Trump could seek to resume direct talks with Kim during his anticipated visit to China, which is scheduled from late March to early April. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, the third round of direct and indirect nuclear talks between Washington and Tehran in Geneva back on Thursday ended with plans for technical level discussions in Vienna next week. Our Lee Seung-jae has the latest.
U.S. and Iranian officials say they have made significant progress during high-stakes nuclear talks in Geneva, though it remains unclear whether a final deal can be reached to avert a potential conflict. Omani Foreign Minister Badr al-Busaidi, who mediated the negotiations, said the two sides agreed to resume talks soon after consultations in their respective capitals. He added that technical-level discussions are set to take place next week in Vienna. Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi, who led Tehran's delegation, described the discussions as serious and productive. He said there was agreement on some issues, but differences remain.
On some issues, we have now become very close to an understanding. On certain other issues, we still have differences of opinion.
Araghchi stressed that Iran's key demand is the lifting of U.S. sanctions, a step Washington has long said would require major concessions from Tehran. There was no immediate comment from the U.S. negotiating team following the meeting. Meanwhile, tensions persist. Iran has rejected U.S. claims that it has resumed efforts related to nuclear weapons development. However, U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance said there is evidence suggesting Iran has attempted to rebuild its nuclear weapons program. Speaking to reporters at the White House on Thursday, Vance warned that any move by Iran to pursue nuclear weapons would pose a serious problem for the United States. He reiterated that the U.S. position remains clear. Iran must not be allowed to obtain a nuclear weapon. For now, another round of nuclear talks between Washington and Tehran is scheduled for next week in Vienna. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Back here in South Korea, transformation in defense posture is fundamental, given its declining population. Accordingly, there has been rapid integration of emerging technology into its military vehicles to ensure a strategic readiness. Our defense correspondent Kim Bo-kyung explains.
With the number of troops decreasing and future battlefields changing fast, the ROK Army is upgrading its technological capability to better respond to future warfare. Among the upgrades is the K-CEV, the Korea Combat Engineer Vehicle. These are K-21 armored vehicles equipped with AI-based remote control systems for surveillance drones, robots, and K-4 and K-6 guns. Previously, it was the soldiers' job to detect enemies and landmines one by one. But now, with drones flying above in the sky watching out for enemies and robots performing minesweeping duties, it has become much efficient and, most importantly, safer for soldiers to secure a route across the battlefield.
With this controller, the K-CEV can be remotely controlled to identify obstacles, fire its guns to suppress the enemy, and clear a path for troops or vehicles.
The Army's 11th Maneuver Division staged live fire drills in Yangpyeong on Thursday with these vehicles that are currently under a trial run, showing how these can secure a route while reducing the time taken almost by half.
Unmanned systems can enter dangerous areas first, followed by troops once the area is safe, improving both safety and efficiency.
A successful drill, but ROK Army plans to get more feedback before these vehicles are sent to the front line.
We will keep improving through training and field tests in various environments, building a strong force based on a manned-unmanned system.
With this 30-ton armored vehicle designed to minimize troop exposure and casualties, the ROK Army is working to prepare efficiently for changes in the battlefields of the future. Kim Bo-kyung, Arirang News.
K-pop girl group BLACKPINK is back as of this Friday afternoon with a third mini-album titled Deadline, marking its first full group release in over 3 years. According to YG Entertainment, the album title shares the best irreversible moments, capturing BLACKPINK at its brightest. The 5-track album opens with the pre-release single track Jump, followed by the title track Go, which features an explosive hook and highlights BLACKPINK's signature dynamic energy. Also celebrating the album's release, BLACKPINK, in collaboration with the National Museum of Korea, put on a light show on the museum's exterior in pink. A Korean biopic that is currently ruling the box office here is also boosting travel to the main filming location, Yeongwol County, where the teenage king Danjong spent his final days in exile. Our Jong-un was there.
Dozens of people line up at the Cheongryongpo dock in Yeongwol, Gangwon-do province. Once the inescapable exile grounds for King Danjong, who was banished by his own uncle at just 16 years old, it is now a bustling tourist hotspot. Driven by the hit film The King's Warden, visitor numbers here have surged more than fivefold compared to last year. Surrounded by the Seogang River and steep cliffs, the only access is by boat.
Visitors can ride a boat into Cheongryongpo, tracing the exiled king's path across the water. And as you can see behind me, the once lonely journey is now bustling with people.
Upon stepping off the boat, visitors are greeted by a dense pine forest. Further inside, they explore the stone monument which marks the original site of the king's exile and his reconstructed royal residence. Tourists walk around curiously, taking the site's solemn atmosphere.
I watched the movie The King's Warden, and since we had already planned a trip to Yeongwol to visit the observatory, I thought we definitely had to come here too.
Among the site's landmarks is the Gwanumsong pine tree and Mangyangtap, a stone tower he built while longing for home. Many visitors say the film has given deeper meaning to what they see.
At first, I was just admiring the scenery because the water was so clear. But then I remembered the movie scene where the raft breaks apart in the water. It made me realize just how miserable he must have felt.
Tourists are also visiting Jangneung, the royal tomb where King Danjong was eventually laid to rest. Around the burial area, which is said to be significantly smaller and further from the capital than the tombs of other Joseon kings, visitors can be seen taking photos, carefully reading the information boards, and quietly paying their respects.
Coming to Jangneung and thinking about the harsh life and struggles King Danjong endured breaks my heart. I hope this tragic story is passed down to future generations.
People also stop by the commemorative pavilion honoring Amungdo, the loyal villager who, according to legend, recovered and buried the king's body. Less than a month since its release, The King's Warden is already nearing 7 million viewers. The film is drawing visitors to historic sites tied to the young king, reflecting the Korean public's continued effort to remember and honor their past. 정혜림, Arirang News, Yeongwol.
And come March 1st, cafes here in the country will be able to cater to our furry friends and their human companions should they want to do so. Our correspondent Park Gun-woo was out and about to bring us this report.
Fluffy pups sit on chairs and enjoy a puppuccino. Some lie down as if completely at home, with their owners enjoying their coffee alongside them. Until now in Korea, most restaurants and cafes have not allowed pets indoors due to hygiene issues. But starting March 1st, stores that choose to comply with some new regulations are able to welcome cats and dogs alongside their owners, just like this one.
As dogs live shorter than we do, every moment feels precious. If more places become pet-friendly, I hope my family can go to places like these more comfortably without feeling self-conscious.
It's been hard to find places where we could go together, but with this change, I think we'll be able to spend more time together when we go out for meals. I also hope that more places, beyond restaurants and cafes, will allow pets to enter.
Key standards for stores seeking to become pet-friendly include maintaining distance between pets and other customers, and installing pet seats or leash fixtures to prevent animals from moving freely. Pets are also strictly banned from entering food handling zones, including kitchens with physical barriers installed. If these conditions are met and approval is granted by local governments, businesses can officially register as pet-friendly establishments. The new laws mean pets could become a more common sight in public places like this cafe, but there's also backlash from those that are concerned about pets in public places. Good boy, Bunny.
I'm worried my young nephews could get bitten or startled and possibly hurt, as they might want to touch people's pets. My husband's also allergic to cats, so I think this could be uncomfortable for some people.
Some cafe owners also worry about misunderstandings between customers with pets and those without.
Requirements like vaccination checks are now part of the process, so we make sure to read and understand these rules because we have to comply. But if customers aren't fully aware of them, there could be some communication issues when we try to explain the rules.
But with greater promotion and institutional support from the government ahead, opportunities for those willing to spend more time with their pets are expected to increase. 박건우, Arirang News.
This is The World Now, bringing you everything you need to know from around the globe. In the U.S., former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton testified under oath and flatly denied any knowledge of Jeffrey Epstein's criminal network. Hillary Clinton on Thursday told a House committee in a closed-door deposition in New York that she never encountered Jeffrey Epstein's crimes and has no memory of meeting the late financier. This was her first formal testimony regarding her alleged ties to Epstein. The committee scheduled former President Bill Clinton to testify on Friday, marking the first time a former U.S. president has been compelled to appear before Congress. Also on Thursday, World Economic Forum President Birga Brenda announced his immediate resignation from the global organization. The WEF confirmed Brenda's departure following an internal review into his relationship with Epstein. The White House announced on Wednesday that First Lady Melania Trump will chair a United Nations Security Council meeting on Monday, as the United States assumes the body's rotating monthly presidency. Her office said she will address a session titled Children, Technology, and Education in Conflict and will emphasize education as a path towards tolerance and global peace. A United Nations spokesperson said no spouse of a serving world leader has ever chaired a meeting of the 15-member Security Council. The European Commission told member states on Thursday that they may use the €147 billion European Social Fund Plus to help provide access to safe abortion care, including for women traveling from EU countries where access to abortions is restricted. The Commission issued the clarification after the My Voice, My Choice campaign gathered more than 1 million signatures, triggering a formal response under EU rules. Critics in countries including Malta and Poland said the move interferes with national health policy. Paris on Thursday awarded its 2026 Grand Prix de la Baguette after judges evaluated 143 loaves in the city's annual competition. Judges scored each baguette on appearance, baking quality, smell, taste, and crumb structure. The contest awards €4,000 in prize money, and the winner traditionally supplies baguettes to the French president's office. This year's title went to Setam Parapillai, the gatipan of Fournil Didot in Paris's 14th arrondissement. Chu Ji-han, Arirang News.
Southern regions and the east of Gangwon-do province saw winter mix today, but further up north it was a different story. In Seoul, we had fairly sunny skies with warmer and dry conditions. In fact, the dry weather advisory continues in the capital area and inland regions of Gangwon-do province. However, morning lows are still on the chilly side. Tomorrow, Seoul starts the day at 2 degrees, Daegu at 1 degree with sunnier skies in most regions, except on Jeju Island. Then highs will go up as high as today at 16 degrees in Seoul. Regions will see a big jump in temperatures with Daegu, Jeju, both getting up to 15 degrees Celsius. And as the March 1st holiday begins, the weather turns unsettled. Rain starting on Jeju on Sunday night will expand nationwide by Monday. Then early spring weather returns next week. With that in mind, here's a look at the international weather conditions.
Right, those are the headlines at this hour here in South Korea. Coming up right after this break is our daily panel session, so do stay with us and thank you for now.
서양 요리는 오직 하나의 주인공을 위한 무대입니다. 완벽하게 계산된 정무라 같죠. 그런데 한식은 밥과 찬이 어우러져 완성되는 한상이 더 중요해요. 마치 자연을 한 폭에 담은 풍경을 같달까요?
요리사인 저도 한국 음식에 대해서 제대로 모르는 거예요.
향이 미쳤다. 저도 맛보고 싶어요.
알면 알수록 과학적이고 이렇게 하면 할수록 제가 더 빠져드는 거예요.
온다. 엄청 왔다. 같이 여행을 한번 떠나보시죠.
How to survive in Korea. Barbecue restaurants. Step 1. Taking care of your clothes. Put your jacket in the plastic bag. Seal it tight. If the stool flips open, store your clothes inside. Wearing light colors? Grab an apron. It's the best defense against oil splatter and smoke. Step 2. Bottomless side dishes. Basic side dishes at a barbecue restaurant. Eat and eat as much as you want. Side dishes come with free refills. Oh, and if you don't see this sign, just ask, 사장님, 여기 밑반찬 좀 더 주세요. Simple, isn't it? Step 3. Grilling meat. There are various kinds of samgyeopsal in Korea. Place the meat on the grill. Turn it over when golden. And again when it looks done. Again and again and again. Step 4. Sam style. You aren't taking bites of sam like a taco, are you? In Korea, we have it in one bite. A pro tip here. Add only as much as you can handle in a bite. Gotta avoid awkward situations. Step 5. Enjoy the perks. After the meal, enjoy the perks offered as a Korean restaurant. Fabric refreshers get rid of the barbecue smell, while mint candies freshen your breath. Did you survive the barbecue restaurant? Hang on. Are you here with someone you want to impress? Then let's skip the garlic. Who knows what will happen?
Drawing more fans from all over the world. Local
consumer prices continue to hover at the 2% census rate in April.
Turning to robots to allow the visually impaired the chance to better indulge in cultural experiences, like the number of hybrid cars are registered in South Korea has surpassed 2 million using its locally developed Yuri rocket.
Arirang.
President Lee Jae-myung has highlighted the need for a comprehensive strategy to transform South Korea's tourism industry into a tangible growth engine. With more on Press Perspective today. Hello, welcome to Friday's edition of Press Perspective. It's February 27th here in Seoul, and I'm Min Sun-hee. So the question now is how does South Korea encourage more foreign travelers to visit the country and ensure that their time here is fun and rewarding and that they will return in the near future? To answer this daunting question and many more like it, I have freelance journalist Rafael Rashid here in the studio. Rafael, welcome back.
Thank you for having me.
I also have writer Colin Marshall with us. Colin, it's great to have you here.
Glad to be here, Sunny.
Rafael, let's start with you. Let's begin perhaps with a recap of the recent tourism strategy meeting held at the presidential office of Cheongwade earlier this week and its relevance, of course.
Sure. So President Lee Jae-myung chaired National Tourism Strategy meeting at the Blue House on Wednesday. And this marked the first time a sitting president actually hosts this kind of gathering since, I believe, 2019. This meeting brought together key ministers alongside private sector figures, including Lee Boo-jin, who's the CEO, of course, of Hotel Shilla and chair of the Visit Korea Committee. And then there was also Alberto Mondi from the Italian Chamber of Commerce. The government announced at this meeting that it's essentially bringing forward its target of attracting, I think it's 30 million foreign tourists, visitors by 2029, a year earlier than originally planned. And, you know, if we look at the figures, just this year alone, they're aiming for 23 million visitors. So it's obviously very ambitious. I mean, we have to think that just last year, we already had quite a substantial amount of tourists coming to the country. I think it was 18.94 roughly. So definitely big ambitions. At this meeting, of course, there were several plans that were unveiled. On the visa front, there was, they're going to look into, for example, including Indonesia to have a kind of pilot program to grant visa-free access to tourists with in group tourists, essentially. And then the government also is looking to introduce a 5-year multi-visa entry for Chinese and Southeast Asian tourists who have previously visited Korea. There are also several other visa categories that they're thinking about. Also, maybe there will also be automated those immigration kiosks at the airport that were only available for, I think it was 19 or 20 countries, but that will be expanded to European Union countries. So I think when we look at all of this, there really seems to be a push to revitalize, especially regional tourism. Airlines establishing new international routes to regional airports. They will be receiving some reduced fees for using those facilities, and cruise terminals will also be operating 24 hours a day, and they will be starting off that kind of thing in the port of Busan. So, you know, to wrap up, when we look at what President Lee emphasized, he said that, you know, K-culture's global appeal needs to translate into people actually coming here and wanting to visit. And even Lee Boo-jin echoed this, saying that Korea needs to become a wonderful place where foreigners want to live in, just like Koreans, and not just visit.
right. All this being said then, Colin, how do you explain the drive behind the Lee Jae-myung administration's determination to transform our tourism industry into a growth engine?
Yes, as Raphael mentioned, this idea of K-culture, the phenomenon of so-called K-culture being better known around the world more widely and more appreciated than ever before. It makes good business sense. You know, you want to cash in on that, or let's shall we say capitalize on that. It's a genuine interest, and I think more foreigners than ever, we could plausibly say, want to visit South Korea. So it makes sense to make it easier for them, or to sort of visibly get the doors open and to just speed the not necessarily speed, but sort of smooth the process for a lot of visitors who might want to, prospective visitors who say, you know, oh, Korea, this place seems, it's like the happening country. It's interesting. I like Korean food, dramas, film. Let's go see the real thing. You know, they might not necessarily know what they're going to do when they get here, or they know how to get here, but not necessarily the logistics when they arrive. So there are, in the minds of many, and we can forget this easily as foreigners who live here, there are psychological boundaries, not necessarily knowing how they're going to navigate the place in both sort of literal and metaphorical ways when they get here. So you can see the motivation, and you can kind of see how it could work as well. It doesn't seem like a pie in the sky type vision, type plan. It is very ambitious to get up to 30 million foreign tourists by 2030. I do think Lee Jae-myung is to be commended for announcing a goal that extends beyond his presidency, beyond his term, which is not usually the case with presidents here, but also as a foreigner who lives here, or really as anyone who lives here, you do feel some degree of concern about the number of tourists increasing that much in not that long a span of time. One of the things one of the qualities I've always valued about South Korea is its relative lack of a large tourist culture compared to a country like even Japan, or to say nothing of Thailand, for example, or looking farther afield, France. You know, these are countries where the tourism is an inescapable factor at this point of life there, whereas it has not been in South Korea, even in Seoul, if you stay out of certain parts of town during certain seasons. And I do wonder, you know, thinking of my favorite parts of Seoul or my favorite parts of Korea outside Seoul, if 10 million more foreigners descending upon them is really something to be anticipated rather than feared. But again, the business logic is, I suppose, infallible. I do wonder if it'll turn into yet another way that South Korea becomes dependent upon the whims and interests of the world abroad, but that's a subject for another day.
It is, for sure. Meanwhile, Raphael, findings show that 80% of all foreign travelers to South Korea are centered here in capital Seoul. Why do you suppose is this the case?
Sure, I think this concentration stems from several factors. I think primarily, I mean, first and foremost, infrastructure is a reality. People will be coming to South Korea mainly through Incheon International Airport, and this serves as the primary gateway for when tourists come in this country. And of course, while regional airports do exist in Korea, they lack the density, I think, for major international routes that would allow these tourists to essentially bypass Seoul entirely and just focus on those areas. So I think naturally when people come to Korea, they will gravitate towards the place where they land. I think also K-culture's global appeal is inherently Seoul-centric. So all of these hot destinations that foreign tourists think of when they come to Korea, you know, maybe they're drawn by K-pop or K-drama filming locations, and a lot of these I think are in Seoul or in Seoul's surrounding areas. You know, if we talk about maybe the BTS effect or Korean barbecue in trendy neighborhoods or palace tours in Gyeongbokgung, again, those are all in and near and around Seoul and the capital area. But I think there are also some structural issues as well. I wouldn't say all, but I think a lot of regional destinations have struggled to develop distinctive identities and narratives that would give foreign tourists compelling reasons to go to those places. You know, going out of the capital area. And there are several industry analyses about this that suggest that many of these provinces and other places have focused on replicating similar infrastructure and experiences. So we may have like zip lines or suspension bridges or these gondolas that we see, basically generic facilities that are replicated around the country rather than cultivating kind of a unique local culture or content narratives that people will feel compelled to go to that specific place for that specific reason. So again, researchers call this a so-called perception gap. Foreign visitors often feel that once they've experienced Seoul, that they've essentially experienced the entire country. So you know, I think this concentration on Seoul, it feeds on itself. The more tourism investments go into these places, the more developed they become, and there might be some disparity or inequality when it comes to other places that might not have such resources. So I think it's maybe a bit of a vicious cycle. But one thing I guess I would want to point out is I don't think this is unique necessarily to South Korea. Many countries do face this kind of capital region concentration where people will obviously gravitate to. And I think it's admirable in a way that President Lee has, you know, talked about this and believes that this is a challenge that needs to be addressed.
Right. Raphael, it almost sounds as if you were a fly on the wall at the meeting on Wednesday, because those are some of the concerns raised by the president and his officials. That being said, if you were at the meeting, Colin, what would you propose to promote tourism beyond the capital region?
Well, there are technical improvements one can suggest, a variety of them. For example, the Korail Tourist Pass exists, which, again, not many foreigners actually know. Awareness can be a problem, but its existence is one thing, and the sort of capacity, flexibility of it is quite another. I think the longest period you can buy it for is 5 days, which is a far cry from, say, a Eurail pass. You know, you wonder, why isn't there a month? Why can't you buy a month and a half, 2 months? Surely, if somebody really wants to get outside Seoul, they want to spend some time in the country, and you can easily spend that much time traveling from place to place within South Korea. If you so desire, that's a minority among travelers, but there are such people who really want to get to know the country, and I think are perhaps not aware of their options. But like many policy discussions of this kind, I think it is occurring a bit too far downstream of the actual problem, which Raphael alluded to, which is the status of everywhere outside Seoul. Within Korea, among Koreans, there's this word, as we know, jibang, which means region, technically, but means not Seoul. You're in Seoul or the jibang, and everybody knows what connotations the word jibang comes with when you refer to a place that way. And so I think really foreigners who come to Korea for the first time, even if they're not that knowledgeable about Korean culture, they sense that everything outside Seoul is not prioritized or really looked up to by Seoulites or even Koreans outside Seoul. So making other regions more robust in and of themselves would have to be the way you go about this in a more enduring manner. You know, I think of other countries like Japan, which has had a huge tourist boom in recent years. And one of the places that always gets hit hard by tourism, for good or ill, is Kyoto. Not Tokyo, which of course has its own, I mean, it's a huge tourist hub, but Kyoto is the next one, I believe. And it's not near Tokyo. You have to book a train ticket and get there. But it's a place where, yes, foreigners think of it as the city where you go to see the real classical Japan, which is inaccessible elsewhere. But it's not just that, it's also a genuine economic center, sub-center in the country. I mean, Nintendo is headquartered there. Several other international companies are. You know, it has a reason to exist, even within the Japanese economy. It's not a tourist spot by itself. And so converting a lot of regions of Korea, which themselves could be falling on hard times now, with tourist infrastructure, I don't think it's not a solution that has a lot of staying power. You know, the first step is to actually is to find ways to remove the taint of jibang, I would say, but that's a much longer term project. I mean, even 2030 is a very short deadline to be doing that.
Right. Moving forward, Raphael, one day before the tourism strategy meeting at Cheongwade, the Culture Ministry spoke to members of the media and it claimed it was going to take stern action against price fixing, if you will, by businesses in the tourism industry. Could you tell us a bit more about this?
Sure. So this briefing laid out fairly aggressive measures to tackle what's become persistent reputational problems. Officials noted that the majority of complaints filed with the Tourism Complaint Centre come from foreign visitors, with unfair taxi fares topping the list, followed by accommodation issues, particularly when it comes to accommodation near big events, when these events happen. And of course, the scale of the problem, I think, has become quite visible, especially these days with the BTS world tour kicking off soon. After the world tour was announced, prices, for example, in Busan, during the dates or the weekend of the concert, they surged considerably, and the Fair Trade Commission surveyed, I think it was 135 properties, and found that the average rate for these places went up 2.4 times during the weekend of the concert. And I think some motels originally priced at 100,000 went up to 750,000 won. We've also seen the same problem happening in Seoul, again, near the concert dates. There's also the issue of unilateral cancellation of your hotel. So you've booked it, it's been confirmed, and suddenly the hotel will say, sorry, your reservation has been cancelled due to some, I don't know, renovation. What they do is then they suddenly list the property again at a much higher price. So the government's response, they're looking to require accommodation providers to declare their rates in advance for peak seasons as well, off-peak season and special events. And properties that don't display prices or exceed their posted rates will face immediate suspension, and repeated offenders could even see their businesses shut down entirely. We also have for taxis, there's strengthening this 3-strike system. Drivers caught overcharging will face an immediate 30-day license suspension on the first offence, potentially leading to permanent revocation. We also have the street vendor issue. I mean, this has gone viral, at least on my social media feeds, where you see certain street vendors charging one price for foreign tourists and charging a cheaper price for the Koreans, or even giving half the amount. And unfortunately, this issue has gone viral on social media, and people are well aware of certain traditional markets to apparently avoid, and in turn that is affecting all the other kind of merchants who are being reasonable and charging reasonable prices for everyone. It basically destroys the experience for everyone else. So the government wants these street vendors to prevent this kind of dual pricing system, and ask that the vendors put out their prices clearly labeled for everyone to see. So officials have acknowledged that legislative revisions will be needed. They'll have to fast track these probably in the first half of this year, so that they can take effect later on in the year when there are bigger events happening.
Right, especially as you mentioned, this year we're aiming to attract over 20 million tourists to the country. Now, all these actions, Colin, essentially they're aimed at boosting foreign travel to South Korea, and also to ensure a series perhaps of repeat travels to the country. That being said, Colin, generally speaking, what would encourage a foreign traveler to South Korea to return, to come back for another visit?
Yes, I think about this because I know a few foreigners who have come back over and over again over the years, and they find something here they like, and whether or not they can speak Korean or they even know their way around that well, they find something compelling here or feel it here and keep coming back. That's a minority. Most, I suspect, come, especially if it's out of an interest in sort of the Korean cultural profile, you could say, currently out there. They come and they feel like they've seen it, and maybe I'll come back. They probably don't. In one sense, I think, because we could say the package tourist experience is almost it feels too complete. For some of them, they come and they go to Gyeongbokgung and wear the hanbok, and they go to Gwangjang Shijang, and they go to the DMZ, and they take the Gangnam K-pop tour or whatever it might be, and they kind of run out of options that are legible to them. They know that even Seoul alone is a huge city. There's a lot out there, but it's hard to identify what else they could do that would enrich their own experience. And so they somehow, after just a few days, maybe a week, they feel like, well, I guess I've seen Korea. I mean, like not just Seoul, but they feel like they've seen the whole of Korea that they can access, or that they have any sense exists. And so I think, in some sense, yes, the Korea presented to foreigners is too limited, and that's something I've been complaining about for a long time. But also, I've been complaining about the fact that tourists often don't make the effort to sort of meet Korea halfway either. They do expect everything to be laid out for them, preferably in their own language. And past a certain point, that's not a realistic expectation. So, it's going to be hard to get to 30 million if you sort of ask people to get at least some grasp on the Korean language. But I think it's not unreasonable to have that expectation.
Right. Raphael, the simple rule of thumb, if you will, is that tourist satisfaction will most likely boost repeat visitation. Personally, what for you would define a satisfying foreign visit? And secondly, how can South Korea seek to encourage travelers to return to the country?
Sure. I think for me, the most satisfying visits in any country or place I visit, I think it's the experience of feeling that it's effortless, but also authentic. I think those are really important for me. I want to feel like I'm discovering something new, not just ticking the boxes of the places that have been listed on Instagram that I must visit, or the restaurants that are claimed to be the top restaurants, top 10 on list. I think those best trips are the ones where you kind of stumble upon a neighborhood restaurant because maybe you got lost, and then you have an impromptu experience and maybe even interact with locals in that way. So I do believe that also the kind of practical ease, of course, is important. Being able to navigate in a place without feeling too frustrated. Of course, maybe you might not speak the language, but at least ease of getting around infrastructure. And I think for Korea specifically, there's enormous potential when it comes to building around what's already working in this country. Again, public transport is remarkably efficient. The food culture, I think, is very accessible for foreign tourists. Also, these days, a lot is actually in English these days, and we can all, of course, use certain translation applications if not. So I think there's definitely a lot of potential. But coming back to some of the points that we've discussed today, I think ultimately Korea should, be aiming for visitors to be leaving the country and feel like they've just scratched the surface and want something to come back to every time and feel like they can discover something completely new and different when they next come back to Korea.
I feel like it's more easier said than done, right?
Exactly.
It is. But it's not our job to come up with the plan. So hopefully they're listening to us and they'll come up with a plan in the near future. All right, Raphael, as always, thank you so much for your insights.
Thank you very much.
Colin, thank you very much for your time and your thoughts.
Thank you.
Right, that ends our talk today. Thank you for watching. We return same time next Tuesday after the long weekend.